Okay. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Alhamdulillah. Welcome to another episode of Woman's Intuition. Today, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to be talking about something very important. And I want the sisters especially to pay attention, because this affects you more than it affects anybody else. So please pay attention, inshallah. Not only do I want you to pay attention, but I also want you to listen to understand and not listen to respond. A lot of times when you hear a man talking about women's issues, you tend to dismiss that on the premise of him not being a woman. So what does he know? What does he know? Well, we share the same world. We share the same experiences. We share the same children. We have shared experiences that gives us just as much insight into the things that challenge women, just as women are privy to things that challenge men. So don't dismiss, a man being able to discuss women's issues or, issues related to women on some level, even if it's not with the depth that, another woman could speak about, obviously. But don't dismiss the fact that, oh, he's not a man. What does he know? He doesn't know what he's talking about, solely based upon the premise that I'm a man and I don't, I'm not privy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've been married, for a substantial amount of time. We have children together. You know what I'm saying? We live in the same world together. We work around each other. Like, why wouldn't I be privy to some degree of some of the challenges that women have? And so the only people that can speak about women's issues are women? Nah, man. Nah, we need to debunk that. And you guys need to check yourselves about that. All right? It doesn't make you a pro at speaking about women's issues simply because you're a woman. Because the fact of the matter is that, right? That's a way they want to say shut up. Right, really. Okay. So let's begin our discussion, inshallah ta'ala. And the title of this discussion will be Superwoman or Super Delusional. Superwoman or Super Delusional. I saw some posts on my Facebook page as I posted this, and there was one sister in particular who, mashallah, she commented and she got it right. Everybody else is kind of dancing around the issues. Well, women got to put on their cape. Women got to do this. And that's not even where I'm going. That's not even where I'm coming from. You didn't even, like you pulled the trigger before you even knew what the target was. You pulled the trigger before you even knew what the target was. Superwoman or super delusional. Okay. First, let me begin. Let's lay the foundation, as we always do, by mentioning the Quran and the Sunnah. So let's lay the foundation from the beginning. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the woman, the first woman, from the rib of Adam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the first woman from the rib of Adam. What are the implications of that? What does that mean? How does that, help us form, our a more divine outlook on relationships between men and women? What are the social and spiritual implications of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creating the first woman from the rib of Adam? These are the things that we have to think about. These things are not just mentioned, in the Quran or mentioned in the Sunnah, in the places that they are mentioned, just for the sake of mentioning them. They have, Allah is mentioning, the Prophet ﷺ is mentioning this, the origins of our, creation, which helps us to, formulate our understanding and cultivate our understanding of our relationships between one another. These are not just mentioned just for the purpose of mentioning them. The Prophet ﷺ didn't mention that women were created from the rib. The first woman was created from the rib of Adam for no reason. That wasn't just mentioned just for the sake of information's sake. All right. There's a divine, purpose behind mentioning that. And that is so that we understand our origin, and in understanding our origin, we understand our place in terms of our relationships with one another. How significant or how insignificant. All right. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, خُلِقَتْ الْمَرْأَةُ مِنْ ضِلْعٍ, that the woman was created from the rib. Not every woman, the first woman. All right. The first woman is the blueprint, just like the first man, Adam, is the blueprint. So you have to go back to the blueprint to understand how our relationships are with one another are supposed to function from a divine paradigm, from a divine perspective. You follow me? Because if you leave it to, our culture, you leave it to our social environment, they're going to, we live in a capitalistic society. So everyone is going to exploit every single facet of human relationship for their own personal agenda. You understand? You can't let the social climate or our cultural, stereotypes and norms dictate to us the proper way for us to interact and the proper way for us as, man and woman to view our relationships. Because if you look at it from that perspective, you're only going to get caught in this, this cycle of being exploited. It's exploitation at its best. So we have to go back to divine texts and then be able to formulate our own understanding. All right. All right. So the Prophet ﷺ said, خُلِقَتْ الْمَرْأَةُ مِنْ ضِلْعٍ, that the woman was created from the rib. This makes her eternally dependent on man, and likewise man eternally dependent on her. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took from the rib of Adam. Medically, are there any nurses here? Are there any, I've seen Sister Nzinga, Zing, any nurses here that can tell me what are the purposes of a rib? What does the purpose of a rib serve? We got to look at this, man, from a medical perspective. Medically, what does the rib represent? The rib cage, what does it represent? What does the rib cage represent in the human body? What does the rib cage represent? It holds in the heart. It protects the internal organs. Protects the heart. Not just the heart, but the lungs too. It protects the lungs too, not just the heart. And if it protects the lungs and the heart, then it also protects respiration. Your breathing. Yes. Thank you, Sister Jamila. Yes. Yes. The heart, the lungs, and respiration. So medically, the rib serves three purposes. It keeps the back upright. Yes, the chest, the shoulders, all of this. If your rib cage breaks, all of this becomes very fragile. Because the rib cage is what keeps everything upright. A man cannot be upright without the rib cage. You understand? So the rib cage serves a very critical, a critical purpose in the body of the human being. And I'm sure when we read this hadith over and over, we concentrate on the second part of the hadith where he said that, the crookedest part or the curved part of the rib is the top part. But we never look at it and say, well, why did the Prophet ﷺ say that? There had to be something more profound that he was trying to communicate to us. And as generations evolve, more information becomes available, minds expand, and therefore we have a more profound and deeper understanding than previous generations because of the technology and the, advances in technology, the advances in information that are available to us that wasn't available to the nations that came before us. You understand? So you would think Muslims living in 2017 with all of the technological advances that we have, you would think that we would be able to go into these ahadith, these narrations, and dissect these and critically analyze these to develop a more healthy relationship between man and woman. You understand? But instead, we're deep in our feelings, and then we use the hadith to either run away from Islam or we use the hadith to oppress one another because we don't really understand it. It's like, dag, man, where's the intellect? Where's the intellect in the times that we're living in? So that medically, the rib serves three purposes. It protects the lungs, the heart, and it supports the framework of the shoulders and the chest, the upper abdomen as well as the back, and it helps with the diaphragm to bring about the process of exhalation. How you inhale, how you exhale, your rib cage also helps. So the fact that you can even breathe is as a result of the help of the rib cage. You understand? As a man, we cannot breathe. A woman helps to breathe life in us after life has been stolen from us by society, by, white supremacy, by all of these other elements that are at play. Think about what a woman does to a man when she comes into his life with the intention of, raising him up to a place where he can actually, provide her with the emotional and financial and other needs that she has. Some women, you let a man come into your life and you accept him as he is, and you don't work towards making him better, raising his status, raising the bar for him so that he can actually be the person that you want him to be. You accept him as he is, and then when, no work is put into that, and then when he doesn't live up to your expectations, then you toss him away on the premise that all men are just terrible, and then you go into this sunken place of, no man is good enough for me. You gotta be kidding me, man. All right? So the ribs, they serve, a very important purpose. So this makes the man internally dependent on the woman and the woman internally dependent on the man. You guys follow me? Point. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Hawa, created Eve from the rib of Adam, then that means that there is something that Adam needed from Hawa and something that Hawa needed from Adam. Go figure. All right. So this is a reality that society, of course, with the help of Shaitan, tries to distort. This is a reality that Shaitan tries to distort, similar to what he did with Adam when he tried to distort his reality of Jannah. When you go back to the story of Adam and Hawa, right? Shaitan tried to distort Adam's reality. Shaitan tried to distort Adam's reality, right? How? Because Shaitan came to Adam and said, هل أدلك على شجرة الخلد والملك لا يبلى. In Surah number 2, ayat 120. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَوَسْوَسَ إِلَيْهِ الشَّيْطَانِ. And Shaitan whispered to Adam. Shaitan whispered to Adam. And what did he say to him? He said, قال يا آدم. He said, يا آدم هل أدلك على شجرة. Can I not direct you to a tree? شجرة الخلد, a tree that will give you everlasting life, وملك لا يبلى, and a dominion that will never perish. He's trying to distort Adam's reality. Adam is living in Jannah. He was given Jannah. But Shaitan comes and tries to superimpose on him another reality at the expense of your soul. You understand? Because your soul is always, the ticket, the bargaining ticket. Your soul is always the bargaining ticket. Anytime you make a deal with Shaitan, it's always the soul that you're using. That's your currency as a believer, as a human being. You are a human being because of the soul that is in your body. We are, make no mistake about it, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, not human beings having a spiritual experience. Very shallow to think that you are a human being having this spiritual experience. Let me go accept this religion so I can have this spiritual experience. No, you are a spiritual being having a human experience. You are a human being because of your always the bargaining ticket. Make no mistake about that. You make a deal with Shaitan, you're making a deal for your soul. Make no mistake about it. So Shaitan said to Adam, can I not direct you to a tree that will give you everlasting life and a dominion that will never disappear? So anytime you see reality being distorted, know that Shaitan is not too far behind. All right? So this also includes the reality between men and women. And of course, in today's time, you can see that male and female relations have been, distorted, have been manipulated. Absolutely. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the two angels that he sent down during the time of Sulaiman. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the ability to teach magic. And the angels warned the people. They said, do not engage in the magic. We only sent to you as a test. And the jinn, they took the magic وَيُفَرِّقُ بِهِ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَزَوْجِهِ to separate man from the woman. Make no mistake of it, this is Shaitan's blueprint. So this whole idea that no man good enough for me, as we're going to get into it, it's a syndrome that you women, a lot of the women suffer from. It's called SBW, Strong Black Woman Syndrome. Yes. Yes. And when I say superwoman, that's what I'm talking about. Because if I would have said strong black women, probably most of you wouldn't be on here listening. Because you take that as a smack in the face. But I promise you, at the end of this lecture, you'll think twice before you refer to yourself as a strong black woman. That has very negative connotations, and there's a lot of stigma associated with that. It's a cultural stereotype that many of our women, including Muslim women, have bought into. This strong black woman. And you're going to see how you oppress yourself by doing that. You oppress yourself by doing that. So in recent times, Shaitan has caused some women, many women, to marginalize themselves to a role of superwoman. Independent. We all know these women. Independent. And if I call you out, if the shoe fits, buy an outfit, you already know how it go. Just own it. Stand in your discomfort. Say, yeah, he's talking about me. Let me listen in a little more closely. Don't say, he ain't talking about me. He don't know what he's talking about. Trying to deflect. Stop deflecting. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to help you help yourself. Because as you can see, the pool of men are not getting any larger. So if you keep walking around with this mentality that no man is good enough for me, no man can measure up to my standards, and all of this stuff that, society feeds you, you keep telling yourself that you're going to end up in a very dark place. And some of you are already in that sunken dark place. You in that sunken dark place already. This mentality that no man is good enough for me. I'm independent. I'm self-sufficient. I don't need a man. Yeah, okay. All right, keep telling yourself that. Because that's not normal for a woman to think like that. That's a cultural expectation that as of recent has been projected on African American women. No other woman in no other culture is totally averse to relationships with the men in their cultural group like African American women. No other group. You never hear a Spanish woman talking about, I don't need a man, from her own cultural group. You will never hear a Caucasian woman saying that. But you, the African American woman, mashallah, tabarakallah, I don't need no man. Okay, keep telling yourself that. Okay, so in recent times, Shaitan has caused many women to marginalize themselves to a role of superwoman. Independent, self-sufficient, emotionally self-reliant. They don't need a man to, they can manage themselves emotionally. Most of which are beliefs that are fueled by a more feminist narrative. A feminist narrative. This stuff comes from a feminist paradigm. Make no mistake about that. It comes from a feminist paradigm that has made many women delusional. You're delusional. Even in the Islamic community. Unfortunately, many women suffer emotionally under the cape and costume of a superwoman. Yeah, you're suffering. Because you got to maintain, it's almost like someone wrote an article. It was called the burden of white privilege. The burden of white privilege. How is white privilege a burden? Because if you have to spend your entire life making it seem like you are more superior to another group, another race, by going into debt, right? Always you got to have the house, you got to have the car, you got to have the look. That's a burden. The burden of white privilege. That's a burden. And so when we're talking about the superwoman syndrome, then that's a burden as well. Yes, it's a burden. Why? Because you got to come out and make it seem like your life is perfect. You don't need a man. You understand? You have to make it seem like I don't need a man. I'm perfect. I can do bad by myself, blah, blah, blah. All the cliches. But deep down inside, you suffering. You are suffering. Anxiety, depression, you're suffering. It's no wonder that a lot of the women who say I don't need a man are overweight. A lot of the women who say that are overweight. And that's no coincidence. Because you are suffering from anxiety. And as a result of that, you start to, do things that are detrimental to yourself. Absolutely. Make no mistake about that. There's no coincidence that many of the women who, take this road, take this path, as time progresses, they start to gain weight. They get very heavy. And then they go into this very deep place that most of the time they can't come out of. So you suffer emotionally under the cape and costume of the superwoman. You make everybody believe that you have superpowers that are beyond what the average woman has, right? Right? You say to other women, I don't know why you in these relationships with these men. You belittle women for being in relationships when in fact you're trying to make yourself seem like you have this like superpower. You don't need a man. You don't need a relationship. You're good, right? Yeah, man. She makes everyone believe that she has superpowers, including herself. But she doesn't realize that she is her own special brand of kryptonite, and she doesn't even realize it. Get out of your own way. Spiritually and mentally obese. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, listen to the way your Lord describes the nature of the woman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, inna min azwajikum wa awladikum aduwwa lakum fahdharuhum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that indeed amongst your wives and your children are enemies to you. O you who believe. O you who believe. Indeed from amongst your wives and your children are enemies to you. Be aware of them. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say that to the men, talking to the men here? He said, indeed, from amongst your wives and your children are enemies to you. Be aware of them. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose the women and the children and tell the men that they could be enemies to you? Be aware of them. What is it about women and children that would make them an enemy to the father of the home, the man of the home? What is it about them? It's their needy nature. It's a needy nature that you have. As a woman, as a man, as a woman, your needs are akin to the needs of children when you are in a relationship with a man. Don't sit here and say you don't need a man. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described you as emotionally needy. He likened you to children as it relates to your relationship with the men. Understand? This ayat was revealed about a companion by the name of Auf ibn Malik al-Ashja'i. كان ذا أهل وولد فكان إذا أراد الغزو وبكوا إليه ورققوه وقالوا إلى من تدعنا فيرق لهم فيعقد عن الغزو وشكى ذلك إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فنزلت هذه الآية في شأنهم. This ayat, O you who believe, indeed from amongst your wives and your children are enemies to you, be aware of them. This ayat was revealed about a companion by the name of Auf ibn Malik al-Ashja'i. He was married with children. He was married to a woman, had children. And when he was on his way to go fight a particular battle, his wife and his children came to him crying. And they said to him that if you die in this battle, who was going to take care of us? You see the needy nature. And it makes the man compromise. Many men were very, steadfast, right? Until they got married. And then the woman made you compromise on so many things. We had so many great aspirations when we were just single, bachelors. Right? I want to be Hafid Quran. I want to memorize the whole Quran. I want to go make Hajj. I want to do this. I want to go study. I want to go do this. Many brothers. I know brothers who were in the Islamic university. Right? As the scholars, they have a saying amongst the students of knowledge, they have a saying, "Ma afsada talab al-ilm illa ma bayna fakhiday." The only thing that has ever destroyed the ambition to seek knowledge is what is in between the thighs of a woman. Absolutely. The only thing that has ever destroyed the ambition to go seek knowledge is what is in between the thighs of a woman. I've seen many students that were there and they were very studious and, would have stayed the path, had it not been for the needy nature of their wives and their children. I got to go back to America. My wife is not feeling this. We need money. We need to work, blah, 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 blah. And they leave. Many brothers that would have been excellent students, some of whom would have probably been sitting where I'm sitting right now, had they been afforded that opportunity. You understand? There's a needy nature that you have as a woman, so don't miss me with all of that. I don't need a man and I'm good, I can do bad. But man, come on, man. Stop feeding into this stuff. This is a cultural stereotype that has been superimposed on us from outside sources, as we're going to see, to keep you where you are, lonely, because without a man, right, then your boy becomes a woman. You understand? You see how that works? Which is why many of our children right now, look at the children. Look at how they dress. Look at how they carry themselves. When there were men in the home, this didn't happen to the boys. So when this whole mentality, I don't need a man, and ain't no man can live up to my standards or whatever, so the man is out of the picture. That's exactly where they want us. That's exactly where they want us, out of the picture. So if they can feed you this stereotype and you buy into it, then we can effeminize your boys and we can turn the women gay. And if the boys aren't feminized and our women are gay, then that means that there will be no reproduction in the African American community. You follow me? Do you follow me? Planned Parenthood. You follow me? We effeminize the boys, and then we turn their mothers into lesbians. And here we are. And while other cultures continue on as they are, absolutely. So there's a needy nature, which differs from woman to woman depending on the plethora of variables. However, this idea behind the superwoman is a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm going to dive a little deeper. I want you guys to pay attention to something. I want you guys to pay attention. Pay attention. So there's a needy nature in women that differs from woman to woman depending on a variety of variables. All right. However, many women consider this needy nature to be a weakness. You consider this needy nature to be a weakness. All right. But this idea of being a superwoman is a self-fulfilling prophecy that infringes on the woman's ability to enjoy her marriage or her relationships, right? Which requires a level of vulnerability. In order for you to enjoy any relationship, there has to be some level of vulnerability. But as a superwoman, you can't allow yourself to be vulnerable. You can't allow yourself to be vulnerable as a superwoman. So you look at vulnerability, right, as a weakness. You look at the needy nature of a woman as a weakness, and it only hurts you in your relationships. But you a self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh, you super black woman, superwoman, you are a self-fulfilling prophecy. How? There were studies that were done, past and present, even as early as 2001. There were studies. I'm going to give you a book after I'm done. There were studies that were done as early as 2001 that supported the popular belief that black people, and in particular black women, do not feel pain. Are you guys aware of that? There were studies that were done, some as early as 2001, studies that were done, researches that were done that said that black people, and in particular black women, don't feel pain. They don't feel pain. There was a study that was done that said blacks, and this is for all of you nurses, pay attention. There was a study that was done that blacks receive 10% less of anesthesia than whites during surgery. Meaning during surgeries, they are giving black people, and particularly black women, 10% less of the dosage of anesthesia that they give to white people. Why? Because they say that we can endure. We can endure. Yeah. The creator of the speculum, John Marion Sims, known as the father of modern gynecology, also known as the Father Butcher, who also has a statue in Central Park in front of the New York. He has another one in front of the New York Academy of Medicine. And it was actually protested just recently, right, by many women. Protested the statue and wanted people to take that down. But J. Marion Sims, who is known as the father of modern gynecology, right, the Father Butcher, he used black women as guinea pigs. This is a form of, here again, white supremacy, right? It's amazing how African American Muslims, we just so far behind the 8 ball. It's ridiculous, right? He used to use black women as guinea pigs for his untested experiments with anesthesia, or without regard for their humanity. He used female slaves to treat vaginal fistula. His belief was that black women, unlike upper-class white women, could endure the pain at higher levels. Eugenics, yeah? During a lecture that he gave in 1857, he said that surgeries were painful enough to justify the trouble. Meaning, although these black enslaved women are enduring a lot of pain, it is worth what we're going to gain on the other side of that. Now, here's a guy who was a very poor doctor, right? He was a very poor doctor, and he created the speculum. So the next time you go and get you go to your OBGYN, I want you to keep this in mind, because they still use the speculum today. And I want you to keep in mind where this came from and the hundreds of black enslaved women that the speculum was used on without any anesthesia. He did not numb these women. He did not numb these women. Yes, Dr. Joy D. Gray talked about this. Absolutely. There was a 2001 study done. 2001. I'm not talking about the 1800s. Right? Yes, doctors get paid more money to perform C-sections than they do vaginal births. Yes. Yes, absolutely. There was a 2001 study that was done that concluded that white Americans superhumanized. Okay, so here we go. Here we go. Pay attention. This is where the whole superwoman, strong black woman, where it comes from. It didn't even come from black women. Just like feminism didn't come from black women. That was not our struggle. But we're leading the pack now. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. We're leading the pack, and even now, Muslim women feminists, you're leading the pack now. There was a 2001 study that was done that concluded that white Americans superhumanize black people relative to white people. Most white people see black people as superhuman, meaning we have some type of weird superhuman power where we can endure pain at levels that white people can't endure. So let me ask you a question. Do you think that this mentality has anything to do with the way that when Caucasians are arrested by the police and black people are arrested by the police, can you see the contrast between how they're dealt with? Can you see the contrast between how black people are dealt with in custody and versus how white people are dealt with in custody? Can you see the difference between the two? And possibly because they believe that we have some superhuman power where we can endure pain at levels that are greater than what white people. So when Dylan Roof, who walked into a church and shot 8 people, 9 people, murdered them cold blood in a church, right? Dylan Roof, what did they do? They took him to Burger King. before they took him to the precinct. They took him to Burger King to get a burger because he was hungry. Before, before they took him into custody. Sandra Bland never even made it into custody. Sandra Bland never even made, she was dead when they took the picture and they released it on the internet. She was already dead. She was already dead. Make no mistake about it. She never even made it to the precinct. Freddie Gray, whose spine was severed, he never even made it. He never even made it to the precinct. He never made it to the precinct. All right, so keep in mind. So there was a 2001 study that was done that concluded that white Americans superhumanize black people relative to white people. This has rationalized centuries of cruelty and brutality against African Americans, assuaging the consciousness around harsh mistreatment towards blacks, while also, validating the fable of white superiority. Absolutely. So now let's look at how this mentality plays out in our relationships and in our marriages. So you are subliminally fed these misnomers, these beliefs, these ideologies. And it forces you to put your superwoman cape on and your costume. And I don't need a man to pay my bills. Serve me. I just want a companion, someone to do blah, 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 blah. All the while, you really want the same elements in a relationship as every other woman, but you can't come out and say it, right? Because then that would make you less than super. So because Caucasians superhumanize us, because white supremacy has released, researches into our culture that tells us that we are superhuman. And many of you African American women, you buy into that mentality. This superwoman, this strong black woman, right? You buy into that. And you don't even know where it came from. You don't even realize where this mentality came from, but you buy into it. Because you're using your pain, you're using your frustration, most of the time from decisions that you've made. Yes, you got to take responsibility, sisters, for the decisions that you made. See, when you were 20, 21, 22, 23, you thought you was in the princess phase. You thought you was God's gift to any man. You could have any man you wanted to. And you did. You had any man you wanted to. And then you had a child with this one, a child with that one. And then when you realize that now you matured and you realize that these type of men ain't ish, right? And now you ready to settle down with a relationship. You ready to settle down after 2 and 3 kids, after 2 baby fathers. And the men that are willing to sit down and spend their hard-earned money and settle down with a woman are not checking for somebody like you. So now you come off with this, oh, men ain't ish, they ain't no real men, whatever the case may be. It's not that it's not no real men. It's just that men that are real men are not checking for somebody like you. They're not checking for you. You got 3, 4 different children by 2 different baby daddies. Ain't no what man who has worked hard enough in his career and got to a certain point. Only a few. وَقَلِيلٌ مِّنْهُمْ, as Allah says in the Quran. Oh, only a few of them. There's only a few good men. Only a few. But now you done playing games, and now you ready to settle down with your 2, 3 kids, or no children. You understand what I'm saying? But you've seen too much, you've experienced too much, and now guys are like, nah, I'm good on that. And then you come with this, oh, men ain't ish, black men ain't ish, there's no good men around. Man, get out of here with that. Because you wasn't saying that 20 years ago when you was in your early 20s. Why? Because when you was in your early 20s, you didn't have the limitations that you have now in your 30s. You got limitations in your 30s. You didn't have limitations in your 20s. So you weren't saying what 21-year-old woman is saying, ain't no good men around. Why? Because when you at 20, 21, 22, you in your princess phase. No kids, your body's still, intact. You can have any man you want. Sky's the limit. You understand? But when you in your 30s, you got a ton of limitations. And so now, oh, men, it's not this. Come on, man. Stop. Stop that. Stop that. All right? But the reality is that the superwoman, you want the same elements in a relationship that every other woman wants, but you are not allowed to say or express that you need that or that you want that because it makes you look weak. You can't express it. You can't say that I'm needy, that I want someone to be vulnerable. I want someone to be vulnerable with. I want someone to love me. I want someone to be like this with me. You can't say that because you got to keep your cape and your superwoman suit on. Right? So you suffer in silence. Well, because you are in your 30s and you have no limitations, you're just one person. But don't debunk the whole concept because of, one or two people who are exceptions to the rules. I'm not saying every woman in their 30s have limitations. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with having limitations. Obviously, if you have children, yeah, you have limitations. There's certain men that you cannot go after when you have children involved. When you are an active parent in the lives of your children, you damn sure have limitations because there's certain people, certain men that are not allowed to be around your children. Without a doubt, you have limitations. So saying that you're 30 and you don't have limitations, that doesn't make you any better than a woman who is 30 and has limitations. Having limitations doesn't make you weak. But what I'm saying is that having limitations now makes your pool of men smaller. The pool of men that you can select from, it makes them very smaller because you have children. You have other responsibilities. Obviously, at 30 years old, you're not looking for a 25-year-old man. So in you at 35 years old, yes, your limitations are more than they were than when you were 20. You understand? So having limitations in your 30s doesn't mean that, that you're somehow weak or you're somehow, to be tossed out to the side. You're a non-factor in the pool of, seeking husband and wife. That's not what that means. You should have limitations at 30, 35, 40. You should have limitations. At 20, you should have limitations as well, but you don't understand your limitations at 20. You don't understand. All right. So don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that at 35 years old that because you have limitations that makes you unqualified for marriage. No, but it means that at 30 years old, 35, 40, your world experiences, your world view, children, and all of the other things, your needs and your wants are prioritized. Yeah, you have limitations. Absolutely. Absolutely. You have tons of limitations. All right, so in addition to this, so you suffer in silence because you want to prove to the world that you don't need a man. And even if you have one, you don't need him for the reasons that other women need their men. So you have some women, super women who are married, right? And they have a man, but they don't need a man for the reasons that other women need a man. I don't need him to pay my bills. I don't need him to do that. I don't need him to do that. You have a husband, but you don't need him for the things that normal women need their men for. And in addition to this, you superwomen, you set a bar of mediocrity. Your bar for your man, for your husband, is so mediocre, man. Any man can meet that bar. Any man could meet that expectation. Your expectations of your spouse is what separates your spouse from the other men that's out there. The bar that a woman sets for her man in their relationship is what separates him from the other men that's out there. If you set a bar of mediocrity for any man that you're in a relationship with, any man could meet that bar. Any man can do that. If you only need a man for sex, any man can do that. Any man can do that. A broke man, an uneducated man, any man can do that. Any man, because your bar is so mediocre. All right? So you set a bar of mediocrity when it comes to men because now they know that you don't necessarily need the full marriage or relationship experience. So this is the way you do yourself a disservice. You say to yourself, I don't need the full marriage relationship experience. I don't need the full experience. I just need a man to come in and do this, and this. That's it. I don't need the full experience, right? So you set the bar of mediocrity. Because you don't need, right? You don't need the full marital or the full relational experience. All right? Because this is what you've silently communicated. You've silently, as a superwoman with your cape on and your suit, you've communicated to the man, and we can, as men, we pick up on that stuff very quickly. We pick up on it very quickly, especially if you're a weak man and you're looking for a stronger woman. Because you got a lot of weak men that are anticipating that you are a superwoman, because what that means is, if you're a superwoman and I'm a weak man, then I can continue being a weak man. I don't have to do anything, because you're going to do it all, superwoman. You're going to do it all. I don't have to do anything. I can just give you good sex, and that's it. That's all I got to do. That's all I'm required to do in the relationship, because you're the superwoman. You got it all figured out. Right? No, it's not that, Gaddith, it's not that her mediocre bar is indicative of how she values herself. It is how she overestimates herself. The mediocre bar is indicative of how much she overestimates herself. I don't need a man for this. I don't need a man for that. I don't need a man for that. So you set the bar real low for him because you've overestimated yourself. And then later on in the marriage, when you really start needing, you don't know how to communicate to your spouse. You don't know how to say, I need you to love me. You don't know how to say, I need to be able to be vulnerable with you. You don't know how to say, I do need you to chip in with our bills. I do need this. You don't know how to do it. You don't know how to do it. Because you've already sent signals. Men, we pick up on signals very quickly. We pick up on signals very quickly. So when we first meet a woman and she comes off as the superwoman, she got it all figured out. She got, songs are made. She got her own thing, independent woman, right? You understand what I'm saying? All of this stuff feeds into that mentality. Miss Independent, right? So now you got men that are looking for Miss Independent. And we buy that stuff. We blast that stuff on our car stereos. We listening to it. It sounds good. And now we walking around with the suit and tie on. And, we, as a woman, because you got it all figured out. Because this guy just made a song speaking directly to your insecurities. He just made a song, Miss Independent, that speaks directly to your insecurities. And that continues to perpetuate your superwoman mentality. Further and further and further marginalize you in the grand scheme of relationships. Right? Because life imitates art. Life imitates art. So when you hear musicians, you hear songs, you see movies with these strong, independent women, whatever the case may be, then that now starts to have a ripple effect within the culture. It changes the culture. It changes the culture. Make no mistake about it. So you silently communicated to the man that you really didn't need him for this or this or this. Only thing you needed him for was this and this and this. And, in reality, some men are in relationships with women and their roles have been already cut out for them. I only need you for this. As long as you're giving me good sex, you chipping in with the bills. That's all I really need you for. You follow me? And sometimes you don't even need good sex. All you need is for him to chip in with the bills. And that's it. You set the bar for him. You set the bar for him very low. That's all he got to do is pay the bills. And then when all of your other emotional needs, sexual needs are not being fulfilled, you can't complain because you've already set the bar low and you've already come off as the superwoman. You got it all figured out. Right? So you get upset and frustrated when your financial, emotional needs are not being fulfilled. When your cape and costume told us as men that you didn't really need much. You didn't need much. That's what you told us. You didn't need much. So I'm giving you good sex. I'm paying your bills. You should be happy. You should be happy. What do you have to complain about? I met the bar that you set for me. It wasn't that high. Any man could have done it. You understand what I'm saying? Like any man could have met the bar. So you are a superwoman to your own emotional demise. You are a superwoman to your own emotional demise. So while you think like a man, your intuition should be telling you to act like a woman. While you're thinking like a man, Steve Harvey's book, Think Like a Man, Act Like a Woman, right? So while society is telling you to think like a man, your intuition and your logic should be telling you to act like a woman. You guys follow me? In addition to this, some women, even when they need to take the costume and cape off inside the relationship, trying to prove to themselves that they can hold on to a marriage and a relationship, they keep it on and endure years of emotional neglect. And it's time for you to now take your cape and your superwoman suit off. You keep it on. Even in your marriage, you keep it on. You keep it on, and you endure years of emotional neglect, financial irresponsibility, infidelity, sexual dissatisfaction. You endure all of those with your cape on and your superwoman suit. He stays because he believes that you're going to be all right. Because when you come off as a superwoman, as men, we tend to say, well, she'll be all right, right? Like J. Marion Sims, we tend to think that you have a high tolerance for pain, so you can endure. Because when you look at how we function as African-American men in relationships with women of other cultures, we function totally different. We're on our best behavior. But when we're with an African-American woman, we're going to give you the total business of BS, because we were told that you can endure a lot of pain. So we take you through a lot. We take you through a lot. Because we were told in our society, our culture dictated to us that black women can endure a lot of pain. Black women can endure a lot of pain. So we give you a lot of bull crap in our relationships. But then when we go marry somebody else, we're on our best behavior. Because they're not, overshadowed by their cultural stereotypes. We are. We are. You understand? We are. So we were taught that black women can endure a lot of pain. So this is why we take you through so much. But not only that, you wear your superwoman cape and costume because you play into the stereotype that you can take a lot, you can endure a lot. So it feeds the stereotype. You follow me? It feeds the stereotype. So we were fed the stereotype that black women can endure a lot of pain. And then we see you with your cape and costume on. So we say, well, it must be true. It must be true. And so we give you the entire business, man, the bull crap, the entire marriage. And then you see us with a Caucasian woman, Spanish woman, a woman from another culture, and mashallah, tabarakallah, we obey all rules. Because she don't even have to set a bar for us. Their culture dictates the bar. You understand? Their culture dictates the bar. You understand? When we marry into other cultures, we don't treat them like crap because their culture already dictates a different bar. Or our insecurity as it relates to other cultures will dictate a high bar. I gotta come correct on this. And that's not because their culture set a high bar. That's because of our insecurity. Our insecurity. So you endure years of emotional neglect, financial irresponsibility, infidelity, sexual dissatisfaction. He stays because he believes you'll be all right. Because like Marion J. Sims, he believes that you are built for this. You are built for this. You can handle it. He believes you are built for this. You are superhuman and you can endure excruciating levels of pain, and you stay cape and costume on because you want to prove to everyone that you are a strong black woman. SBW. SBW. And you have to live up to the box that you put yourself in. You have to live up to the box that you put yourself in. Well, the thing is that I'm not just speaking to Muslims today. I'm speaking to, our conversations have transcended just the level of speaking to Muslims. We're not just speaking to Muslims today. The stuff that we are addressing has now transcended just the box of Islam and Muslims, because this stuff is affecting us as a culture. And if we want people to come into Islam from our culture, then we have to address both simultaneously. You understand? We have to address what's going on in Islam, and then we have to let that transcend and reverberate throughout our communities, so that when people come into Islam, they already know that these issues are being addressed. Not like when I became Muslim and converted to Islam from an African American community, and I heard none of our issues as African Americans being addressed in Islam. And this is what creates that cultural identity crisis. It creates a cultural identity crisis because you come from predominantly black neighborhoods. Black neighborhoods. Many of you from New York, you come from the projects. All you know is black. All you know is black. You grew up in homes where there were picks in the bathroom with the hand on it, right? Everyone had one of those picks in their bathroom with the hand on it. You understand? This is where we came from. To come into Islam and to find that issues that are related to our culture, our people, not being addressed at all. And believe it or not, there are a lot of Christians who follow as well, because these issues are not being addressed in the church either. They're not being addressed in the church either. The church just wants your money, come, clap, dance, sing, and then go home after 2 hours after this long sermon talking about a bunch of nothing. None of it resonates with you because it doesn't speak to your human experience. And, it's, as a brother mentioned on Twitter, he said that it is, in Islam, we do what is called culture shaming. Culture shaming. So as African Americans, our culture is shamed. Everything that is related to anything black is shamed. But then when we come into Islam, anything that is Pakistani, anything that is Arab, anything that is African, anything that is whatever, they're allowed to keep their culture. But as African Americans, we are not allowed to bring that black stuff into Islam. Make no mistake about that. We are not allowed to bring that quote unquote black stuff into Islam. Because there's no racism in Islam. Right? Think about the psychology. There's no racism in Islam. So leave that black stuff somewhere else. But then when you come into Islam, you put on a Pakistani outfit. Go figure. Many of the Muslims, when they first converted to Islam, tell me you didn't put on a Pakistani two-piece outfit. You had committed cultural apostasy from the moment you converted to Islam. You apostated from your culture only to adopt another culture. Facts. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. You come into Islam, you put on a thobe, which is not our dress. You put on a two-piece Pakistani outfit. It's not the fact that most black stuff is steeped in sin. We have to sift through and that's part of our identity. My children are African American. They're not going to identify with any other culture. Brothers go to Saudi Arabia and study, and you put the gutcha on your head and you learn Arabic, and they still see you nothing more than a Negro. Make no mistake about it. You will never be an Arab. Never. I don't care how good your Arabic is. I don't care if you dress like them. I don't care. And Africans will never accept you as an African because they have racism amongst them as well. West Africans, absolutely. You will never be Nigerian. You will never be from Guinea. You will never be from any of these places. Some of them are more racist towards you as an African American than some Arabs. Absolutely. Absolutely. They don't even see you. And their skin color is the same complexion as yours. You come from them and they're racist towards you. Absolutely. So, it's like culture is culture shaming. Culture shaming. It's like, as an African American, you don't get to say anything about your culture. Nothing. You don't get to bring your culture into the narrative. here's this book, here's that book. We take from these scholars, we take from those scholars, and everything that is related to you and makes you who you are is a non-factor in this narrative. Nah, but we changing that. We're changing. We are the narrative. You understand? We are the narrative. There's a hashtag that's going viral on Twitter, and it's called Black and Muslim in Britain. Black and Muslim in Britain. The Afro-Caribbeans, right? The Jamaicans, and anybody who is from, you know, of people of color, right? That are in Britain now, have now started a movement, man, where they're now starting to have discussions about, you know, their issues that are related to them, man. And I'm just so proud of them, because in the UK, they didn't have Martin Luther Kings. They didn't have Malcolm X's. They didn't have that. They live under the aristocratic government. You understand what I'm saying? Aristocracy. And, you know what I'm saying, like dictatorship. So they're not allowed to have these type of uprising civil rights movements. And I'm sure they've had some of those movements underground, but never on the level that we've had here in America. And now they're starting to have those discussions. So after all, as I conclude, after all, you can't let them down, right? You have to be superwoman. So let me end this with a narration from Sahih al-Bukhari. Pay attention to this hadith. I mentioned the hadith before, all right? And inshallah ta'ala, you will get the point. In Sahih al-Bukhari, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on the authority of Abdullah ibn Abbas, radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting with his father Abbas. And he said to Abbas, he said, "Inna zawja Barira kana abdan yuqalu lahu Mughith." That the husband of Barira used to be a slave. And she was married as a slave to a man by the name of Mughith. They used to marry their slaves, and the slaves would have children and things like that. And they would also give the slaves an opportunity to purchase their freedom through what is called mukataba. Mukataba is where the slave would, you know, would be able to earn their freedom. They would pay the owner a certain amount of money until the entire fee was paid off, and they would secure their freedom. So Barira, she did not want to be a slave anymore, so she went to Aisha, the Prophet ﷺ's wife, and she asked Aisha to help her secure her freedom. Aisha went to the Prophet ﷺ, gave her the money. She gave the money to Barira to go and begin her process of purchasing her freedom. But she was married to a man by the name of Mughith, who was also a slave. So the Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna zawja Barira kana abdan," that the husband of Barira was a slave, and his name was Mughith. He said, وَكَأَنِّي أَنظُرْ إِلَيْهِ يَطُوفُ خَلْفَهَا يَبْكِي وَدُمُوعُهُ تَسِيلُ عَلَى لِحْيَتِهِ. He said, it's as if I'm watching Mughith chasing Barira down the street, running after her, crying while his whole beard is soaked in tears, begging for Barira not to leave him. Begging for Barira not to leave him. And he said to the Prophet ﷺ, said to Abbas, he said, أَلَا تَعْجَبْ مِنْ حُبِّ مُغِيث بَرِيرًا وَمِنْ بُغْدِ بَرِيرًا مُغِيثًا. He said, aren't you amazed at how much Mughith loves Barira, but how much Barira hates Mughith? Isn't that amazing? Why? Because it is not normal that when you love somebody to that degree, that the person meets your love with the same amount or even a greater amount of disdain or dislike. He said, isn't it amazing how much Barira loves Mughith, and how much Mughith loves Barira, and how much Barira hates Mughith? And then the Prophet ﷺ went to intercede. He said to Barira, he said, أَلَا رَاجَعْتِهِ فَإِنَّهُ زَوْجَكِ وَأَبُو وَلَدِكِ. He said to the Prophet, أَلَا رَاجَعْتِهِ, why don't you go back to your husband? فَإِنَّهُ زَوْجُكِ, he's your husband, وَأَبُو وَلَدِكِ, and he is the father of your children. He is your husband and he is the father of your children. Why don't you just go back to him? And Barira turned to the Prophet ﷺ and she said to him, Atatmurni, are you commanding me to go back to him? Are you commanding me to go back to him? And the Prophet ﷺ said, La. He said, Innama ana ashfa'. فقالت لا حاجة لي فيه. The Prophet ﷺ told her, go back to him. He's your husband, the father of your child. And Barira said to the Prophet ﷺ, are you commanding me to go back to him? Are you telling me to go back to him? And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, I'm just trying to intercede. I see a poor man begging for his wife not to leave him, and I'm just trying to, I'm trying to intercede for him. It's totally up to you. And she said to the Prophet ﷺ, La hajata li fihi, I have no desire to be with him. The Prophet ﷺ was amazed and astonished because he saw love in contrast to disgust or dislike. The heart loves whom and what it loves, and dislike whom and what it dislikes without contingency. That the heart could love someone or something even though that person doesn't necessarily love them back. The heart articulates its own language of love if you let it free to express itself. You understand? He said that, look at how amazing this situation is. Mughith loves Barira, but Barira doesn't love him back. All right? And that's because the heart, it doesn't matter what love is being given to the heart. When the heart does not love the thing or the person that is in front of it, it's going to articulate that regardless. Barira didn't care how much Mughith loved her. You understand? Her heart was free to express itself the way that it wanted to, regardless of how, it was being met with love. She did not have any desire for him. And this is what happens when you don't suppress your desires, your feelings in a relationship. Even if the person is telling you, I love you, but if your heart is saying, my heart is not there, you can love me as much as you like, I don't love you. You understand what I'm saying? She took her cape off, she took her bodysuit off, her armor off, and she allowed her heart to express itself the way that it needed to. She didn't care that it was the Prophet ﷺ interceding on his behalf. The heart wants what it wants, absolutely. Let the heart articulate and don't suppress it. She didn't care that it was the Prophet ﷺ that was commanding her or trying to give her some advice. She didn't care. All she needed to know was, are you commanding me to go back, or are you just kind of suggesting? And the Prophet ﷺ said, I'm not commanding you, I'm just suggesting. And she said, no, I have no desire to be with him. And this is what happens when you take your cape off. So you have some women who, unfortunately, they suppress themselves. They suppress their emotions under the cape and costume that has a propensity to turn a superwoman into someone who is super delusional. You are resistant as a woman with your cape on and your mask on and your suit on. You are resistant to vulnerability. You mask your anxiety. You mask your depression. You mask your strength. You mask your stress. And this even occurs in the Islamic community, where remaining married in a sea amid the drowning relationships and marriages make you look like an Olympic swimmer. Absolutely. In the Muslim community, you have many sisters who they put on their cape and their body armor, their superwoman suit, and they come out amid the sea of drowning relationships, and they look like an Olympic swimmer. But at what cost? At what cost? At what cost? You're an Olympic swimmer in the sea amid drowning relationships, but you are drowning in your own pain. You're drowning in your own pain, and you never get the help that you need. How many sisters wear their superwoman capes, their superwoman outfits in their relationships in our communities, and they are suffering, drowning in their own pain, and they never get help because they're too busy trying to maintain that image. You maintaining this image because you say, wow, look at all these marriages dissolving, all of this sea of drowning relationships, and you look like an Olympic swimmer, but you drowning beneath that suit in your own pain because your heart is not able to express itself the way that Barira did. It's not. So Barira, she wasn't going to wear the cape and costume to appease her husband, nor was she going to wear the cape and costume to appease the Prophet ﷺ or the Islamic community that they live in. She wasn't going to do it. I'm free. I no longer have a desire to be with him, and I want out. That's it. She wasn't wearing the cape. She was not wearing the cape. So many sisters are wearing the cape in their communities right now. You're just trying to save face. You want everybody to see that you can maintain a marriage, but at the cost of what? At the cost of what? She chose her. Soon she was given the opportunity, she chose her. So when you make a man, as I conclude here, sisters, listen very carefully. When you make a man feel that his presence in your life doesn't represent what you need, we will never give you what you need. You understand? You say, oh, I don't need a man for this. Or, I don't need a man to pay my bills. Or I don't need a man to do this, right? When you make a man feel like his presence in your life does not represent what you need, we will never give you what you need. You will never get what you need. And we will never aspire to be what you need in a relationship. Men are creatures of structure. Men are creature guidelines. That's our nature. That's how we function. So if you make us see your deeper emotional needs from the very beginning, then we'll either pass, realizing that you are more than what we have the capacity to offer, or we'll aspire to be what you need us to be in due time. We'll aspire to be what you need us to be in due course. Understand? Let me reiterate that one more time. Because some of you are typing and you're talking and you're not listening. If you make a man feel that his presence in your life does not represent what you need in a relationship, you constantly telling men, oh, I don't need a man to pay my bills. I don't need a man to do this. I don't need a man to do that. Right? You are making the man feel like his presence in your life doesn't represent what you need. We will never aspire to be what you need from us. We will never aspire to be what you need. You have to be able to articulate that from the very beginning. From the very beginning. And give the man an opportunity to either pass, believing that, you know what, you are a little bit more than what I have the capacity to offer, or will aspire eventually to be what you need us to be. And if a man doesn't aspire to be what you need him to be in a relationship, then suffice it to say, either he just cannot, and maybe you set the bar a little too high for him, and maybe he cannot, he is incapable, or he's just incompetent. He's not the man for you. Maybe he's the man for somebody else. Maybe he's the man for somebody else. Maybe not necessarily the man for you. Marriage is based upon values. Marriage is based upon expectations. And if the expectations and the values that you have of your marriage are not being met, then that means that the person is either incapable or the person is too incompetent. Bottom line. They can't do it. They're not the person for you. All right. So the book that I came across and kind of doing some research with this is called Behind the Mask. Behind the Mask of the Strong Black Woman, Voice and Embodiment of a Costly Performance. You can go look the book up. It's on Amazon, I believe, for like $26. Behind the Mask of the Strong Black Woman, Voice and the Embodiment of a Costly Performance. And it's by a woman by the name of Tamara. I'm not even going to try to chip her last name up. I don't even know how to perform it. I don't even know how to pronounce it. So this is what I wanted to present, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So as you can see, this was not me beating up on women for being strong. This is me telling women that by you presenting yourself as being strong, that you are unfortunately going to suffer as a result from a lot of stress and anxiety, because you are suppressing yourself. You are suppressing your emotions and your feelings under the cape of being a strong black woman or superwoman. It's called behind the mask. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop here. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathira. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. We will do the, I don't have the book with me. I read some quotes from the book. Actually, some of the quotes that I mentioned in there was from the book. I didn't actually buy the book. I came across the book as I was doing some research, and I'm probably going to go buy the book myself. I'm going to probably go buy the book myself. So it's not beating up on women for being a strong woman or whatever the case may be. I get it. I get it. Some of you are put in situations where you have to. I get it. But what I am saying that is that when you have to know when to put your cape on and take it off. That's what I'm saying. You have to know when to take the cape off, take the suit off, and be able to feel, allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to express what's going on. That's what this is about. This is not about me beating up on sisters for being strong. Love you too, Auntie. Okay, inshallah, we'll stop here. If you guys have any questions, I don't have time for questions. So if you have any questions, you can leave them either underneath the video on the Facebook page, or you can create another page or whatever, and you can ask some questions, and then inshallah ta'ala, we'll take some time out to ask the questions. The name of the book is called Behind the Mask of the Strong Woman by Tamara. Starts with a B, the last name. I can't even, sounds French or maybe African or something like that. No, I didn't have a chance to check the book that you inboxed. Jazakallah khair wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.